Welcome back to Dreams of the Nameless, where states use sterilization as a form of punishment for crimes in this dystopian moment. From USA Today, the Alabama governor, what's her name? Kay Ivey, I think is her name, signed into law a bill that requires chemical sterilization for some sex offenders. The idea here is if you rape somebody under 13, they make you take a drug that decreases your testosterone, and I think it does a couple other things that render you incapable of bearing fruit. And so I believe that it's temporary, although I don't know offhand what the long-term effects of taking sterilization medication are.
Maybe this version might be, but I'm pretty sure generally when they speak of chemical castration, like it's a permanent thing.
Well, in this case, it says chemical castration involves taking medication to reduce testosterone hormones and other chemicals that drive libido, the bill says. The parolees are required to start the treatment a month before they leave prison and continue treatment until the court determines it is no longer necessary. So I guess I don't know from the letter of this article if not necessary means you're sterile forever now, so you don't need to take the pills, or if it means you take the pills until we've decided that you're not an imminent sexual threat to the populace.
Yeah, I know in the case of Alan Turing, for example, they gave him chemical castration, and it eventually led to his suicide. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
So Republican State Representative Steve Hurst introduced the bill, which the state legislation passed just last week. The representatives' previous bills, and this is the reason that I wanted to talk about this article at all, the representatives' previous bills on the subject, which forced child sex offenders to pay for their own surgical castration, failed to make it out of committee. And so that's a nice way of saying that up until this bill, this is the compromise for them wanting to forcibly put you under and surgically sterilize you. That's what they wanted to do, and the compromise is what I would argue is still dystopian, but is a lesser form of the same idea. So some have argued, I'm guessing probably Republicans, that the crime marks the child for life, and so therefore the punishment fits the crime because it marks them for the rest of their life. Obviously, the ACLU is suing them on Eighth Amendment grounds, the right to not be punished cruelly or irregularly. And here's a fun tidbit that they throw in at the end of the article. 7 other states and territories, California, Florida, Guam, Iowa, Louisiana, Montana, and Wisconsin, have authorized chemical castration. Offenders may be sentenced to chemical castration in all cases involving serious sex offense in Iowa, California, and Florida. So, once again, our home state being the troubadour for the most dystopian policies. It's amazing that Iowa doesn't have the death penalty. Let's revere that fact for a moment. Who knows how long that's going to last, but when you see the other brain-dead, regressive nonsense that Iowa passes, it's miraculous to me that they haven't brought back the death penalty with fervor. For me, this is pretty much the same issue that I have with abortion. I don't think the state should be going inside of other people's bodies and telling them what it can produce, when it can stop producing it. I think there's a little bit of overlap when you say that somebody who rapes a 13-year-old is obviously mentally unstable, damaged in some way, and so you could argue that it's not that different from court-mandated antipsychotic medications. For me, the line is, if we're saying that they're sane enough to be released into the public, then this is purely punitive. I.e., if we thought that you were going to go rape kids again, then the system has failed and you shouldn't be paroled. If we truly thought that was a huge risk. But the entire process, and jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, or correct me in the comments, isn't the whole purpose of parole that you're proving to them that you are reformed and they're letting you out early? Isn't that the basic concept? You have good behavior and whatever, so you go in front of a parole board and make your case, and based upon what you say and your record in the prison, they decide whether or not they think that you are reformed enough to re-enter society after 20 years instead of the life sentence you might be in there for, etc. Is that not the case?
I believe that's what it's supposed to be, but I don't know functionally if that's what it
actually
is.
Well, let's save that for another video. You're not going to find a defense of the penal system from me. I'm a prison abolitionist, but given the current system, this is a move that to me should be opposed fundamentally at its onset. Any power that you give to the state, it will eventually abuse. The death penalty, we know they kill innocent people all the time. And I don't know if we want to get the ball rolling on state castration of citizens, that under any circumstance.
Yeah, what I was trying to view here, I was trying to search this out. If it were, because I was wrong, chemical castration is generally thought to be reversible if you stop the treatment, although there may be some permanent side effects. The flip side of that is, though, if you look at the example I mentioned, Alan Turing, he accepted it willingly as an alternative to prison. So if that's the way the system is, like, oh, you can take some drugs that have all these effects that will effectively make you not a sex offender, but like it maybe not, I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't know the efficacy of the thing. Or you can spend time in prison. I could maybe see an argument for it, because then like you're basically offering an alternative. Both of the alternatives are fucked. Both of them are bad. But at least then it's not literally like someone's holding you down to a table and injecting you full of chemicals. It's, you get to pick your punishment, like pick one. So there's some sensibility there, but like I still just, as you've put it, like I'm a prison abolitionist. Like I'm not for imprisoning people. I'm not for forced castration. So for me, part of it depends on what the wording of the bill is. But as you said earlier, if this is just an alternative to forced physical surgical castration, that's pretty fucked. I mean, this is the better compromise option. Like, really? Everything about this, I saw this story and I was like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But here we are.
Here we are. No pole. Sticking our hands right in it.
Yep, all up in that.
Yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say other than if your state doesn't have these laws, you should oppose them, even if you hate criminals. My personal feelings of hatred towards sex offenders are not going to carry over into me writing, wanting to support or otherwise bolster the idea that the state should come in and sterilize citizens based on crimes being committed. And the dubiousness of the last paragraph that I read, where in places like Iowa, California, and Florida, they're already expanding it. It's already expanding to, oh, you committed a sex crime? Well, therefore we're going to take away your right to have children. That's what they're saying. This is no different than if you have a felony, you can't vote. Even if you get out of prison, you still can't vote. We strip that right from you. Now we're adding the state can come in and strip your right to procreate, which is what they're doing across the board to women. And obviously we know that this will probably affect minorities and poor people much more. And what's next? You're in on this drug offense, so your choices are what? We cut off your hands? And so that's my final question is this any different than if you steal, then we chop your hands off?
No, I mean, it's very Hammurabian, I think is a term we could coin. It's very much eye for an eye. It's very petty. It's very not well thought out. I think it doesn't take into consideration that, even after we've supposedly punished them, just this tag of sex offender or felon has already destroyed their lives. They're not going to be able to go back to a normal life, at least until we reform that system. And now we're also adding on to it, like, oh, we're going to screw up your reproductive system too. It's just over. It's just gross. Everything about it is just not thought out. I did also want to mention, I do think that in general, it's easier to give the power to the state than it is to remove power from the state.
Well, yeah, that's a riff on what I said a little bit ago, which is any power that you give to the state, they will eventually abuse.
Yeah, and so I do think this is a situation where, unfortunately, at least for us in Iowa, it might be too late. But that doesn't mean it's not something that needs to be opposed. It's not something that I want my state to have the ability to do. Whether or not it's moral or what have you, like, that is not a power that we should have handed over to the government to decide for people. I guess that's ultimately where I fall on it. I think it's gross. I think it's not well thought out.
Yep. Let us know what you think in the comments down below, and hit the subscribe and the bell and all the other clickable goodness down there at the bottom.